Talk to me.
Hey, welcome back to ScreenCrush. I'm Colton Ogburn, and the A24 hit Talk To Me is finally on Netflix. We wanted to cover this film when it first came out, but we didn't have the bandwidth to do it, so I am excited that it is now getting a second life. We are going to cover the themes and symbolism of this movie, what the spirits really are, and of course, that crazy ending. So let's get into it. So to truly understand this movie, you have to understand Mia. She is the film's sun, the world this movie revolves around. Now, a big part of her character is her grief over the death of her mother, but that isn't what drives her. What drives her is her loneliness. In fact, when Riley asks if she has become depressed after her mother's passing, she says,
It's just feeling alone.
So the film reflects Mia's loneliness in several ways, particularly in the color palette. Much of the movie is graded in blue. In fact, her house is very blue and sterile. Like, genuinely, the hospital has more color than her home. So it's obvious that her house is not a loving, warm environment, at least not to Mia. It's also worth noting that her dad does try to make the place appealing. For example, he always has flowers out, but because Mia feels like this about her dad,
I hate being around him. So depressing.
his design touches do nothing. Now, compare that to Jade's home. Jade's home is filled with color and warm lighting. In fact, from the street at night, it almost glows with this light escaping the windows. And this is firmly rooted in Mia's perception of the house because, once inside, the family has a kind of mean way of interacting with each other.
Look, Riley, you're not 9 anymore, right? Good night.
But for Mia, it's her refuge. So it's painted in this warm light in contrast to the harsh blue light in her own home. Now, Jade's house is the only location in the film that is consistently warm, and of course, as the movie goes on, we see it less and less. And that's fitting because the blue represents Mia's loneliness as the film goes on and how she becomes more and more isolated. But notice, she is always wearing yellow, even in these harsh blue environments. Now, Spikey did a great color analysis on this film. I highly suggest you check it out. And in that analysis, he points out that the yellow sets her apart from both the other characters and her surroundings. The warmth she once found comfort in is now a visual indicator of her outsider status. Another way this film visually confirms her as an outsider is through multiple shots of her through mirrors and panes of glass. They also do this a lot with the ghosts, but we'll get into that here in a second. Now, in Mia's case, we first see her through a window. We also see her leaning on a fish tank at the party, and we even see her reflected in the table here. This shows how she feels separated from everyone around her, like she is on the outside looking in. Now, Danny and Michael Philippou also used reflections to show the ghosts, and while this does foreshadow Mia's ending, I think it's even deeper than that. This doesn't just tell us she'll become a ghost, it shows us that she already feels like a ghost in her own life, like she is moving around the world without really affecting anything. And that's also why she has this dream.
I have this recurring nightmare. I'm looking in the mirror, but my reflection is gone. Like I don't exist.
It wasn't a premonition, she just felt so insignificant in her own life that it manifests in the same way as a ghost. Now, all of these visual cues make it clear that this loneliness isn't just a passing feeling for Mia, it is all-consuming. It deeply affects how she sees the world, and most importantly, this loneliness is something that terrifies her. It's laid out explicitly here.
Mia, stop! No, I'm going.
Stay with me.
And this fear is a huge catalyst for the movie and ultimately why she ends up in limbo herself. Now, I do want to point out that her loneliness does not stem purely from her grief. Of course, her grief does play a big part in this, but there are legitimate reasons she feels disconnected from the people around her. For one, Jade isn't really a nice person. In fact, she is shown to be self-centered.
I love it when you forget to pick up Riley.
Ow! I'm sorry, I had you on mute.
And while this isn't uncommon for a teenager, it does prevent Mia from genuinely connecting with her. Now, I'm not going to be too hard on her dad because he got a really tough hand, but his lie about Ria's suicide is the main reason Mia can't connect with him. She has too much cognitive dissonance between what he's told her and what she subconsciously knows is the truth. Now, this inability to connect with her best friend and father makes her that much more desperate for connection. We constantly see her butting into spaces she isn't wanted because no one will reach out to her. She is almost always the friend initiating and making plans.
You're doing it again tonight.
No.
Look to see if it's real.
No, not tonight, Mia. I can't.
And that is one of the reasons that she's so nice to Riley. He actually initiates contact with her, even if she is his second choice.
Can I hang with you?
Your house, bro.
Now, of course, she doesn't want her relationship to be like this. She wants to feel wanted, but we'll get more into that here in a second. Now, this desperation for connection makes her primed for the spirits. In fact, it's heavily foreshadowed that she'll take the hand too far in this scene. Now, the song they're singing is Chandelier by Mazzio, which is inspired by her struggles with alcoholism. The lyrics go, I'm gonna swing from the chandelier, I'm gonna live like tomorrow doesn't exist. And later she sings, I'm holding on for dear life, won't look down, won't open my eyes, keep my glass full until morning light, cause I'm holding on for tonight. And this perfectly describes Mia's mental state. She is looking for anything that will just make her feel better, consequences be damned. And you know, I think it's very interesting that Riley's singing this song with her as opposed to someone like Jade or Daniel. To a much lesser extent, Riley is also dealing with a lot of loneliness. His sister straight up forgets about him, his mother is harsh with him, and his best friend doesn't even like him.
I didn't know you best mate.
He's living a lonely life, and intuitively, Mia understands this. It's part of the reason she lets him use the hand in the first place. She knows what it's like to feel alone, and she wants him to feel connected as well. Now, Mia's perfectly primed for these spirits because they give her what she wants, a feeling of connection that she doesn't have to force. I mean, think about it. There is no way to be closer to somebody than literally possession. Also notice how she describes the feeling to Riley.
I could hear and see and feel everything, but I was in the passenger seat.
Even in her one real-ish connection, she is very much in the driver's seat. Like, literally, she drives him around. This is the first time she's really felt out of control and therefore wanted. But we have to ask, what are the spirits and why are they so drawn to Mia and Riley?
I can take the spirit part.
Jesus, you scared me.
Good.
Sorry guys, that's Brianna, the ghost that haunts the horror section of the store, and yeah, go ahead. Who better to talk about spirits?
So I've seen people theorize that maybe they're demons because the eyes turn black, but I think that's pretty ruled out by Mia's ending. We know she becomes a mouthpiece of the hand, and at least according to Christian theology, humans can't become demons. They can be possessed by demons for sure, but they can't transform into demons. I think it's more likely that these are lost and tortured souls, transformed by their time in limbo. After all, they don't haunt a video store. They roam around eternal darkness until someone lights a candle. And on top of that, in their short stints with humanity, they're mocked and made into TikTok trends. That would mess up most spirits, at least the ones I know. And also, their only source of light other than the candles might be getting fresh blood, so to speak. It's not really clear if the vision Mia sees of Riley is actually true, but if it is, there's light. It isn't just pure darkness. So that implies they literally only see light if they're actively torturing someone.
Well, that is super dark. Thanks, Brianna.
My pleasure.
So that's what the spirits literally are, but in a metaphorical sense, the hand is a good stand-in for drugs and the spirits are the horror of addiction. The scene where Mia first takes the hand is filmed similarly to several drug injection scenes. The Mother Superior scene in Trainspotting, for example. They both involve tying a part of their body tightly. For Mia, it's her waist, and for Renton, it's his arm. And when their drug of choice kicks in, their eyes roll into the back of their heads and they both fall backwards. Continuing with that metaphor, it's clear why the spirits are drawn to Mia and Riley. In real life, they're both at higher risk for addiction. Mia because of her depression and loneliness, and Riley because he's so young. Don't do drugs, kids. Mr. Mackey says so.
Drugs are bad. You shouldn't do drugs.
Now, within the world of this movie, those messed up spirits are so drawn to Mia because her original ghost, the drowned woman, sensed that loneliness inside of her and knew that she could manipulate her. Daniel says,
I feel like they read what we think, you know? They could know everything about us.
Now, that loneliness is why the ghost fought so hard to stay inside Mia. And don't forget, she actually manages to possess Mia for 94 seconds, which is how she got a foothold in her soul. Now, the film makes it clear right away that the drowned woman didn't leave Mia at the end of the seance. In the next scene, Mia is framed under a skylight with rain falling on it, giving the illusion that she is underwater. And that's our first clue that Mia is still with the drowned woman. That's right, it was never Rhea at all. She was an imposter. Let's get this clear right out of the gate. The woman we see haunt Mia for the majority of the movie is not her mother. It's the drowned woman. Throughout the film, she becomes less and less able to mimic her mother, and we can see her appearance start to emerge. Now, I do think we saw the actual Rhea, but just for a split second in Riley's possession. Let me explain. I think the truth lies in the song that Mia sings during the possession monologue. The song is called La Foule by Edith Piaf. It's about a man and a woman who are pushed together during a crowded celebration. They're dancing together and it's intoxicating, but then the celebration swells and the crowd pushes them away from each other. In fact, the lyrics that Mia sings are, and I'm translating from the original French, "Suddenly I let out a cry among the laughter, when the crowd comes to snatch him from my arms, carried away by the crowd that drags us." I think that that is implying that Riley really was possessed by Rhea, but only for the first 50 seconds. The crowd of ghosts brought Mia and Rhea together only to push them away from each other again, and there are some other things that hint at this very fact. For example, when Riley says, "Talk to me," he doesn't react with the same abject horror that everyone else does. Instead of looking away quickly, he just stares. And it would make sense that he had a different reaction because he was actually someone he knew. Also, around 60 seconds in, his demeanor completely changes, and notice that he grips the hand tighter. We know these spirits don't want to let go, so that was probably the exact moment that something overpowered Rhea. I also think it could actually be Rhea at the beginning, because the only ghost that would have known to call Mia me is the drowned woman, and we know that she doesn't possess Riley. And before anyone says, couldn't the drowned woman have possessed Riley first? I'm iffy on that. My biggest issue with that theory is that it implies that the drowned woman could jump out of Mia, go into Riley, and then come back to Mia without her using the hand again. Remember, we see the drowned woman impersonating Rhea through the glass moments after Riley's possession. I think her being able to leave and come back again just kind of breaks the rules the game has established. And if only the male ghost ever possesses Riley, it implies an insane amount of collusion between the drowned woman and this ghost. They're clearly working together to an extent. We see that at the end, but I just imagine her telling him, "Oh, you need to impersonate her mother. She always calls her me." Also, the drowned woman's entrance cues tend to be marked with the sound of water sloshing around. And we don't hear anything like that when she enters Riley.
I'll let you in.
I think the drowned woman was always going to try to manipulate Mia into killing herself, but it got that much easier when the crowd of ghosts pushed Rhea and Riley together. So now that we understand Mia and the spirits, let's get into the ending. So it is stated that the spirits get weaker the longer they are inside someone.
Bodies should kick them out. They get weaker the longer they're in here.
And we see this with the drowned woman's inability to hide her true appearance. And honestly, I'm not even sure Mia would have been able to see or hear her at the end if it wasn't for the fact that she was constantly reaffirming her connection with the hand. And notice, Jade says this.
You know, I actually think he's getting better. I woke up for a second. It's like he was himself again.
So by the end, the spirits are on a ticking clock before they just get pushed out altogether. And the drowned woman plays on her guilt about leaving the kangaroo to suffer in order to get her to kill Riley. Of course, instead of Riley, she becomes the kangaroo herself as she is hit by a car. Now, just like a lot of things in this movie, this scene is left open to interpretation. Some people think that Jade pushed her, others think that she sacrificed herself. And I think I'm personally in the sacrificed herself camp, but let me explain. I think this all comes down to the interaction between Mia and Sue. Throughout the movie, Mia's viewed Sue as a surrogate mom, and that's established very early on in the film.
I'm a bad person, Sue. Can you fix me?
You're not broken, Mia.
When Sue rejects her after Riley's accident, that is actually the first time the drowned woman fully manipulates Mia.
You come back here, I'm gonna call the police.
The drowned woman thrives when Mia is at her lowest and most alone, and given the loss of her biological mother, the rejection of Sue immediately puts her in a terrible headspace. Now, right before the car crash scene, Sue runs into Mia and she says this.
I'm so sorry that I blamed you. I know that you wouldn't do anything to hurt him.
First of all, we know this isn't an illusion from the ghosts. This did actually actually happened. And the Philippou brothers do a great job of separating Sue from Mia here.
No, Mia's here. What's wrong? What's happened?
In order to make it clear that this really did happen. They are really at the hospital together. Secondly, this scene has so much depth. On a surface level, Sue absolves Mia of her guilt, even though it was kinda her fault. But on a deeper level, she affirms something that Mia desperately needed to hear for a really long time. She is not a bad person. Subconsciously, Mia was aware that her mother committed suicide. I mean, the story never really made sense, and the distance between her and her father stems from the fact that she knew he was lying. A common feeling when a family member kills themselves is guilt, and Mia always felt that, but because she was never told the truth of what happened, she could never really process that guilt. Much like the ghost around her, she was suspended in her own personal limbo. And the newfound knowledge of her mother's death paired with Sue's absolution finally takes her out of that limbo. And then a candle sparks, and I love the bright yellow candlelight illuminating the hallway. As we talked about earlier, Mia is drawn to warmth, but as the film goes on, the color yellow is also used to isolate her within a frame. So this candle is a perfect encapsulation of her position at the end of the movie. She is still running towards light and warmth for a sense of connection, even though it will never be fully real. Now, A24 has confirmed a sequel, though we don't know much about it yet. Mia's actress, Sophie Wilde, isn't currently signed on to the project, but she expressed a desire to be involved. And I wouldn't be surprised if this sequel follows the group that we see in Grease. And hey, there is a possibility that there's more than one hand. Josh says,
the other hand's just out there somewhere.
Now, Greece is pretty far away from Australia, so I don't know how it would have naturally gotten there, but hey, eBay does exist, so who knows? Now, as a standalone, I think this movie is great. It mixes more elevated art house style with that pacing and scares of a traditional horror movie, and it does it extremely well. And I just can't wait to see what the creators of this film do next. So let me know, what do you guys think? Do you think Ria was ever there? Do you think Mia will return? Let me know down in the comments below, and huge shout out to the writer of this video, Brianna McLarty, the ghost who haunts the horror section. You can find her socials down below. Now, if you are new here, please do feel free to subscribe and smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Colton Ogburn.